Hey Eric, so not a long time ago we just had another recording just 2 days ago. How is it going for you now?
Good, good. It was just the other day.
Yeah,
We're got a crazy recording schedule.
yeah. I have to spend more time next week with my kid because my wife is going for a small trip to Ukraine, and I'm gonna be at home with the kid, so I cannot do any more recordings next week until she comes back. And yeah, so we try to put as much as possible this week. So how is it going on with business in general? I heard you released Blackfire recently.
Yeah, we do. We have support for Blackfire now in the UI. It's under the PHP settings. We have Xdebug in there as well. So if you go to PHP and you'll see Blackfire, and it allows you to put in your key, enable it, and good to go.
Great. So now we don't need to ping any of your developers anymore to enable Blackfire profiling, and probably we can now profile any Mage module store without, like having sys administrator actually taking a look at it. So that's great news. So now even merchants can just enable Blackfire and create Blackfire profile, Blackfire account, and specify server settings, enable it, and then just run profile button and see how their Magento store perform. So
no ticket needed.
So developers need to be real scared now.
Oh, it's better. It's better than Blackfire. If you turn on Xdebug, yeah, your performance is gonna change dramatically. But at least with Blackfire, you're not interrupting any performance, so it's much less intrusive.
Yeah, with Blackfire, what I really like is that in Blackfire you have this possibility to, just specifically tell, hey, only for this user, for this session, I want to profile. So when I'm running a profiler, all the other users, they don't have any feelings that someone profiles the website. But for instance, if we talk about New Relic has some overhead because it has, I still have to capture some traces of the execution plan of the application, because it has some special rules, like if it takes more than specific time, it starts to creating a trace of what's happening over there, and it still counts number of database queries, number of IO operations to Redis, let's say, and so on. So New Relic is very intrusive. It's not a lot of overhead, of course, comparing to
Xdebug.
Xdebug, yeah, but still. Yeah. Okay, so let's
do the intro thing.
Yeah, let's record the intro.
All right, Load and Loop is sponsored by Blackfire.io. I'm Eric Hileman, CEO and co-founder of Mage Mojo Magento Hosting out of New York City. The purpose of this program is to take some of what we've learned over the last 10 years of Magento-specific hosting and evaluate one of our customer stores. We'll share with you what we find in hopes that it may help improve your Magento skills and the performance of your Magento stores. Along with me on this trip is my co-host, Ivan.
Hello, my name is Ivan. I'm one of former Magento 1 core developers. Now I'm independent consultant here in the Netherlands. I'm helping with performance and a lot of other crazy stuff, like building complex asynchronous PHP applications for Magento merchants in order to bring performance to the next level. So let's recap a little bit on the topics that we were discussing last episode. So we were talking a little bit about a lot of concurrent orders, right, in the system.
Yeah, pushing it up to over 1,000. You think you could do 2,000, 3,000?
Yes, and no problem. As soon as the operation that happens on MySQL side is not run in parallel. So basically, the biggest problem, as I was explaining last time, is that MySQL, every connection creates a new thread in operating system. So every single connection has basically own thread to operate with the data. So it reads data from the file system, it populates the memory, it also locks memory when it wants to update something. And let's say when a lot of threads try to update the same table, there is a problem with negotiation of which thread comes after which thread, and this is not very scalable, right? So MySQL needs to fight with itself internally in order to process more and more records. What works great in MySQL, for instance, there is a possibility to have a very high throughput for write append only operations. So if you don't need to update a record, it's very fast process because
just doing inserts.
Yeah, as soon as you insert, acquiring a new primary key is very fast operation. So it's like just increment on an integer in memory, and this increment on integer in memory is very efficient operation on any CPU, whatever thread it is. So this one worked great, but and the rest of the things are just write into the file in append only manner, and then when you flash a transaction, it just updates an index also in the background. So like the new MySQL versions, they are much more better at dealing with this kind of concurrency. But the problem still exists when you work with things like stock, when you work with things like sales rule counters, when you work with things like, hey, I just created a new order, but at the same time, like after a millisecond, I'm also running an update operation just to change the order status because we got a confirmation, hey, it's paid. So I just want right away to update an order. And in this case, here's where the scalability issues are coming in, because then you might have issues with an actual database, because when a lot of people try to update the same record, there is a high chance of wait log timeouts and deadlocks in the end. So how you can actually achieve much more better throughput is to have a worker that is responsible for the whole save operation by itself. So this worker knows about all the customers who wants to place an order, and this worker can properly batch MySQL operations. So it can decide, hey, I'm gonna, every 3 milliseconds, I'm gonna collect all the pending orders and I'm gonna store them in the database, and then I'm gonna notify all those 3,000 customers with the result of this order save operation. But I'm not going to do it one by one. I'm going to do it in...
I'm going to open a connection, make it...
I already have a connection. I just start a transaction. Within this transaction, I'm going to insert all those orders in one transaction. So it's going to be a batch operation. For MySQL, it's going to be much more simpler, much more performant, because it's the same as you just insert, let's say, 10,000 records in a database table within a single transaction. For MySQL, it's nothing, and it can do it easily. I remember there was something like 100,000 records per second. That's something that MySQL can.
200,000 or more, I think.
So MySQL is capable much more than people just think about it. The problem is the application implementation of that part.
Exactly. That's why when someone says on Twitter, like, oh, you're limited by MySQL and you're limited by Redis when you're using it as a message queue, like, no, you can do 200,000 inserts a second in MySQL, and consumers, or not consumers, that's Rabbit, but in a message broker, like, there's no way that's limiting your order throughput. It's the application and how the application is using it. Like, stop blaming the stack. Like, that's not a thing.
Yeah, it's quite funny because I hear so many people just deciding, hey, we're going to switch a database, let's say, to another one because we think it's going to allow us more scalability. But, like if you use the same approach with this another database system, it's still going to be the same problem in the end. like you might get maybe 10 orders more per second or something like that, but that doesn't make sense to change the whole stack that you are using, right? It doesn't make any sense. So
wait, what do you think about using Redis as a message broker? That was new to me. Like, I guess Redis add pub and sub to it, and now it's like, to me, Redis was always a key in memory key value database that's used as a cache. So to hear it used as a message broker was new to me.
It's kind of interesting approach, I would say. It's good from point of view of simplicity of your stack. Like one less application to manage in your stack, and everyone actually you have Redis nowadays, so like sounds reasonable. I also at some point of a time I was wanted to write a message queue in pure PHP.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised you don't have one in the stash.
Actually, I have even repository in my GitHub, but it was created only just as proof of concept with pure in-memory one, when you have a message queue just in your asynchronous PHP process, where you just do it within one single event loop. I didn't do it multi-process communication yet, but in the end it's possible. And if you are using Redis for it, it's good, because like Redis makes sense to use when you write an asynchronous application. If you write a simple application that's like regular PHP with FPM, time to open a Redis connection, send all the data to it, close this connection, and so on. Like, you saturate the traffic to Redis, right? So it's gonna like, you have to run really huge network uplink to your Redis instance in order to be able to process a lot of them. And also Redis is single threaded, so it makes sense to use Redis as a very lightweight message queue. It doesn't make sense to spread it out as a scalable solution, because only if you are using, let's say, a multi-threaded version of Redis, it might work, but still it's a little bit of a risk. So I would better use something like RabbitMQ, or something that is built specifically for scalability and for clustering of the message queue itself.
That's what my thought as well. Like Redis persistence is a polling. So like Rabbit, that's, if you send it a message, it's atomic. Like, it guarantees you have the message. Like Redis, it's in memory and it's polling and writing to disk. So you don't have the level of persistence, right? Between the two?
I think it depends. If you take a look at the synchronous programming itself, there is a high probability when you write an eventually consistent system that the data that you send might not arrive at the destination, and you need to resend it to another destination then.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but once it's in there, like, you could lose it in theory in Redis because it's in memory if something went wrong, versus if something goes wrong in Rabbit, you're not going to lose a couple seconds or however often you're flushing to disk.
So that's why you need to have some kind of a feedback operation. So when you write, let's say, a stock deduction system, and let's say you have an actual web service that receives requests, hey, I want to reserve this item, or I want to adjust the quantity in a warehouse for this item. And this web service will communicate with the actual worker that's gonna run an actual deduction in a data store. And this worker needs to return back a message acknowledging that it's already processed the request to deduct it. If you don't have this feedback, you cannot rely even on RabbitMQ, because you can just send a message to RabbitMQ. Yes, it's saved in RabbitMQ, but if your worker or your workers are dead, you are not processing those messages. So you just you just spam your RabbitMQ message queue. So it always should be a feedback operation. You should never think like, hey, I've sent my message into message queue and it's done. No, it's not guaranteed to be done.
I was thinking like, so Shopify, and I haven't watched these videos that I got links to, but Shopify engineering team was talking about, I guess apparently they're using Redis as a message broker in their order transaction process, which kind of seems, I don't know, like if you're an ESP and you need a message broker and you're a startup, I don't know, it kind of seems okay, use Redis. But if you're going above that and you need consistency and you're like, I don't know, that seems to get a little bit crazy to me, like you would use Redis for that, just the level of persistence.
I think here's a very good sign that Shopify is not using any asynchronous microservices. So all their code is synchronous, definitely, because otherwise they would not use Redis for message queue. Because Redis for message queue is kind of a simple solution, but it's simple solution if, let's say, you have Ruby on Rails application, right?
Yeah, that was the Rails thing. And apparently it's really big in Rails community. And I stepped into a whole battle zone between PHP and Rails or whatever, Magento versus,
I really like Ruby language. I wrote a bunch of orchestration.
I don't know anything about it. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. Like, it could be cool. I don't know.
Yeah, the Ruby language is very cool. I really like it. Like, it's you can change the language on the fly. Like, you can change properties of numbers or strings as a class of objects. So you can create new methods. You can replace the default behavior of the language internal structure.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. It's interesting language. I was writing a lot of orchestration for Vagrant environments at some point in Chef, and Chef is based on Ruby. But what I really don't like, I don't like Ruby on Rails. So for me, this framework looks a little bit too much from the era of MVC frameworks. MVC in bad connotation, because it doesn't have strict separation of the domain. It has a separation by kind of type that doesn't bring any business value. So, but it's just my opinion. There's probably a lot of people who will tell Ruby on Rails is just nice. Yeah.
We're going to get all the Rails fanboy hate now on Twitter. and then there's the multi-threading, like, something like Rabbit or Kafka is going to be multi-threaded and support that versus Redis that's single-threaded.
Yeah, there is a Redis fork, that is multi-threaded, but yeah, you are right. It's not multi-threaded out of the box. But if, let's say, you write really asynchronous applications that is multi-threaded as well, like what you can do in Rust, you don't need Redis at all, because in that case you can send message from one thread to another thread, and you can tell, hey, I have, let's say, 32 core CPU, and these 32 cores are effectively 64 active threads to which you can send stuff and process concurrently. And it basically means that I just can start processing something on one thread and then just move to another thread. And at the same time, I can handle, let's say, 200,000 connections simultaneously without any hiccups. So,
yeah.
And this is only possible if you have completely different paradigm in application development, when you really don't block on I/O. Because as soon as you have somewhere an I/O block, you will introduce some kind of a message.
Like sending an email.
Yeah. Well, like sending an email, for instance, there is a good example of a place where asynchronous I/O can really simplify your stack, because you can just connect to SMTP server asynchronously. You don't need to wait till it responds to you. You can just process other requests that are happening. You just send some bytes and you wait till those bytes processed, but you don't wait. You run some code at that time. And unfortunately, a majority of PHP projects, Ruby projects, even Python projects. In Python, actually, there is some asynchronous community. I think there is some traction over there, but majority of these development communities are never working with asynchronous code. So they just wait.
It's tough, man.
Yeah,
it is. I did a lot of asynchronous with C# years ago, writing an SMTP server, and it's mind-boggling. Like when you get into the details, managing state and multi-threading and juggling cores, it's challenging.
This one I know for sure. Like that's why I really like Rust, because Rust made it compile time issues, so you cannot really mess up with your concurrent memory access. It just spits out at you. You cannot. You have to explicitly specify atomic multi-threaded reference type in order to be able to send this value to another thread. So you don't have a possibility, like in majority of languages like C and C++, Java, and so on. Like every single value that you send somewhere, you usually use pointers or references, right? And in Rust, it's very common just to hand over the ownership of the value. So as soon as you have a variable, you are an owner on it. As soon as you finished your function execution, this value is not copied somewhere. The ownership of this value is transferred to another piece of code.
That's very important.
Yeah, and in Rust, it's just on a language design level. So this is completely changes your attitude to development. Like it's much more harder to develop at the beginning, but as soon as you understand this logic and why it's happening,
when the code runs, you know what it's doing and why it's doing it.
Yeah, so it forces you to think about your application structure from point of view of sending messages actually from one piece of code to another one, because the message is living in your piece of code as soon as your code is running. So as soon as your function stopped running, you cannot access this reference later without some special language construct that allows you to do it, but it's
just to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, so
you have to go out of your way.
You usually follow something that's called idiomatic Rust, where you write something that is without any shenanigans with own memory management. So let's start with our merchant today. So tell us a little bit.
SoundApproach, right up our alley, man. All kinds of audiophile gear. So I was already on the site looking and shopping around because I'm always looking to upgrade stuff. Like you are. You just upgraded your stuff. Like we're always like everybody who starts the podcast is always continuously upgrading their stuff.
So I actually, it's a funny story about this microphone, because this microphone I bought it back in 2011.
Really?
Yeah.
It's just like in the drawer, like waiting to be used. Like
I was thinking about starting online training courses at some point around Magento, and I was doing also some video recordings. There is some recordings on Vimeo from that era where I was doing online screencasts. And I was explaining about TDD and Magento and how to build stuff with
That's
Magento.
Almost a decade ago. It's almost 10 years.
Yeah, it is. It's 9 years ago, so it was a long time ago. Like it's hard to believe. And this microphone actually is this is the first thing that I bought specifically for education. So, and now it just works pretty well. So. I don't
finally getting your money's worth.
Yeah.
And it sounds good. It still sounds good. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's condenser based, so it's USB condenser based. I think it was one of the first ones at that time with USB connection. So, and it works in any operation system still. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Eventually, you'll be recording from Linux. Almost there.
Yeah, I still need to buy another camera. I think about buying Blackmagic 4K pocket camera.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, it's specifically made for video, so sounds more fun, because my GoPro unfortunately doesn't work well under Linux. And that's pity. And under Windows as well, like you have to apply a lot of color grading. That's out of my league of expertise.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's review our customer today. So this is Magento 2, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so let's disable right away aggregation and let's profile a homepage. Let's see what's happening here.
Yeah, let's look for some cool stuff to buy. Let's look for some upgrades.
I recently
could use some audiophile headphones.
I recently saw. Do you watch this Linus Tech Tips YouTube channel?
He's been going for a long time.
Yeah, he has some nice video about 30K headphone set. Like,
oh wow, I can't imagine
like really the headphones that come with the whole set to listen them. Like you have amplifiers, you have a bunch of other stuff like filters and so on. So it's just crazy stuff. You need to watch that video. It's quite interesting.
No, I don't. My wallet and my bank account says no. I don't.
Yeah. And okay, so this is 5 seconds on the homepage. So this is a little bit of a problem, I think, for this customer, because the homepage shouldn't take that much to load. Let's take a look probably with the timeline view first. Let's see. Actually, let's go to database queries, because this one I think is the most important one. Whoa. So here we have a loading loop, definitely. So there is some piece of the code that loads categories in a loop, maybe somewhere in the menu.
Oh.
This is kind of common problem for most of Magento developers. They just instead of adding an attribute to the select into the menu tree generation, they decide, hey, I can't add any of my attributes. However, those attributes already in flat table, so you can already access them. You just need to observe one event in Magento resource model for flat nodes generation, and it will be available in the final data structure from which the menu is built. But they just decided, hey, I'm just gonna as soon as I render a category menu item, I'm just gonna access this category and load all the data related to it. And then you see this kind of query, like.
So how do they fix that? You think that's coming out of an extension, or that's a custom theme?
We will see.
There's probably some.
We will see it in the timeline view. So let's switch to it. I think it's going to be the menu rendering process. Let's take a look. So we see a header, we see sections, container, and the top menu. Yeah. So the top menu you see here, it takes 1.5 seconds. And this customer also using Varnish as well, right? So here is also another problem with Magento, that even through the top menu is included as ESI include, Magento still renders it. However, later on it's anyway gonna render it only through ESI include, so a little bit of waste of time. But in general, I think it's just a custom template. I think
Mega menu. We just saw SmartWave mega menu.
Yeah, just previous one. So it seems like a very popular extension. So I think this mega menu is doing some calls. So let's take a look at the model load. Yeah, so you see here, we can see from the metrics. By the way, the reason, if you want to get some right away information about how many models has been loaded in Magento, you can install Blackfire Magento 2 plugin, and then it will show you these metrics in the timeline view. So in this case, for instance, it tells me that Magento 2 all model load it tells me that there is some models that has been loaded 181 time. So this is quite too much. Okay. Yeah, so here where we see those queries, so as a very quick fix is actually replace the rendering of this block in the default handle with just hard-coded ESI tag, and then create a separate handle in which you will render the full-blown menu. Then your menu will be cached with varnish, and it will be cached only once instead of being cached on every page. Enter.
Talk a little bit more about that on the ESI. So that's one. There's something about that. Who was it? Lightspeed is a drop-in replacement for Apache, and they have a Magento plugin, and they say one of the big benefits is that they batch everything up to their ESI calls. So whereas Magento and its varnish extensions making individual ESI calls for each include, they batch them up. And is that what's happening here?
I think Magento has only one ESI include out of the box. So I don't know why. I don't know why you do need to batch it together. So
I don't know. They mentioned something about that. Of course, they're trying to sell us on their Light Mage cache or whatever it is. And that was one of the things they were explaining to me, is that they get a big performance improvements by only going to varnish once versus Magento going to varnish multiple times. I'm not sure how they did it. I'll have to refresh my memory and ask them about that. And we could talk about that probably in a future episode.
Yeah, definitely. Probably we can discuss it more in details on some of the examples. Maybe we should start a sub show when we talk in deep about technical details, you know.
Click here to watch our video on
on ESI includes, right?
On ESI includes.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea. I think a lot of people will find it valuable from developers.
Yeah, I'd be interested in doing it.
Yeah, so here I see another problem. If you take a look at the product collection, you can see that they're having a search engine running here. So it means that some stuff gets output from Lariat navigation, but I don't see any Lariat navigation on this page. So this sounds interesting. Maybe this block is showing some issues, but I think it couldn't be automatically generated. I think it's manually entered. So there is some Lariat navigation load happening that shouldn't happen on a home page. And this takes quite a lot of time, like 500 milliseconds. You see it here. So render filters before, and then it tries to execute an empty search query. Oh, it's Mirror Suite. Okay.
Frequent flyer on the show.
Yeah. So this plugin has some kind of around search plugin, and inside of it, it actually builds Lariat navigation. So I think the Mirror Suite search plugin actually doesn't take into account when product collection is loaded without Lariat navigation, and it tries to load Lariat navigation for the whole store. So what we see here is actually building all the facets that are available for the whole products in a store. And this is pretty bad for this customer, because yeah, here you can see as well, like this thing called store API documents. this tells us that there is some kind of write operation happening into MySQL. So this is right away a big no-no in your...
That's a new one.
Yeah, it's something that happens in standard default MySQL implementation of alert navigation. So Magento grabs all the product IDs and it stores it into temporary table, and then from that temporary table it's going to show you the results on a page. A little bit of overkill in my opinion, because you could write much more better queries than trying to use temporary tables, because it's going to kill under high level of the system.
Don't get me started on temporary tables, man.
Yeah, so here you see there is insert into search TMP. And this one, like what I see here, I don't think it's used anywhere else afterwards, because most probably let's do a small thing. Let's run with the debug mode enabled. I just want to see what kind of query is executed there. So we enable debugging mode. This is a very cool feature, by the way, that you can see every single parameter that is sent in a database query. Like an initial profile, you usually want to see an aggregated data when you see just queries grouped by tables without unique parameters. But now, like, we will see every single query separately being executed. So I just interested into this database query. Is there any product ID as a parameter? Yeah, the same number of queries. Let's see those queries. Oh. This is gonna open a little bit slower because there's plenty of data. Yeah, and I accidentally closed it. So let's search for. Yeah, let's just. Can I copy it somehow? Select. Okay, let's try with if something. Does it highlight it for me?
You may need to highlight all. Looks like there's a
search query as well. This is crazy. So yeah. Oof. Single product load, you see? Quite a lot of things happening here.
Why are all these being loaded though? Like, it's just that's just the navigation drop down that they're showing, where you shop categories or shop by brands.
No, this one, what I'm looking right now at, this is actually a load of a product.
Yeah, why is it loading a product?
Because some attribute is missing, and developer just decided, hey, I'm just going to load the product separately because I don't want to add an attribute to original collection select.
Oh, okay.
So this is probably the reason.
Can you tell where that's being, who the culprit is that's calling that?
So this is a problem with review without having an access to the code, because usually when you have an access to the code, you can add some Blackfire profiler marks, so you can go into the code piece, because I could tell it if I would be able to see more details what actually gets called there, but probably actually with debug mode maybe it's going to be more open to what actually happening. Oh yeah. List.
I mean, we have access to the code, but we can't really change it. We wouldn't want to show it on the show either, probably.
Here it is.
Okay, so who? Oh, daily deals.
Smart Wave.
Gotcha.
And this one is actually
Gotcha.
a very terrible extension, because take a look at this method called getFirstItem. This getFirstItem. So first of all, they're using collection in order to access the one product, and then they load this product again. So like for every single check for is it a deal product, they're gonna load collection of products, and then they're gonna take the first item out of this collection of products.
Whoa.
So this is kind of terrible. And this is happening for every single product that they see on this list. And let's see, are any of those products over here, do they have any kind of deal label? I don't see any deal label, so I think it just like probably this one, like this product, probably it's a deal product. But
retail, you say retail price.
But this extension, like, you can just compare the final price and regular price of the product, and if the price is different, you just show the discount. Like, you don't need an extension for that. You can do it directly in a template, or just creating a simple block that will compare these two values and will tell you, hey, is it a deal product or not? You don't need to load the full product model again from a collection in order to achieve it. So this is definitely a poor implementation here. So
how much time is that? The daily deals?
Like, it's 20 milliseconds for each product. And, you know, like, we have pretty much a lot of them. So
yeah, how many are they actually showing? I only saw. Well, I guess you can. It's a slider, so
yeah. So it's a slider. So this all list. So it takes 1 second in total to render, and I think this 1 second is mostly contributed by this deal product. And apart from that, there is also some standard Magento pricing. Yeah, final price as well gets involved over there, but not as much as a deal product.
Yeah, I think there's only like 10 or 12 products in that slider.
Yeah, and it's too much time spent. So let's finalize our homepage investigation. So we can see in the homepage, the menu is a problem. So something is loading a category. Yeah, so our SmartWave mega menu is loading category.
Mega menu.
For every single category, there is a separate database operation to load additional data from it happening. Another thing that we see here is that our Mirror Suite search extension triggers loading of all the alert navigation aggregations on a homepage, where this should not happen at all, because this one is rendering of the block related to products. Like, it just loads products that are shown on the homepage. So like, it already knows which product IDs those are. And here, Mirror Suite extension doesn't add any guards to make sure that, hey, are we actually on alert navigation page that we need those filters? Like, this is the wrong place to preload the filter values. And here they just decide, hey, we're just gonna add some filter values. So this is right away just completely redundant piece of the code that can save 1 second. So just...
and a lot of I/O.
yeah, and a lot of I/O. Like, because it also writes to database, not only reads from it. And then another one is our deal products. So basically, like, fixing those issues, it all starts with this. Yeah, so here we are. Basically, this customer can have around 1 second render time on the homepage. like there's probably other things as well, like, oh yeah, also not optimized composer after load as well. So the common thing as well. So optimized composer after load deal with those issues, like, and they will have definitely the time to first byte below probably 800 millisecond.
They'd love that.
Yeah, and this is very simple fixes. So this is like just add an attribute into collection instead of loading the model separately, then not calling search plugin on homepage. This is simple fix, right? And another simple fix is just instead of this deal product extension, just create a check if final price is different than regular price, and then you just show this block in this piece of HTML. Like in total, I think like it's a couple of days of developer work in order to fix those. However, from point of view of the actual return on investment, it's much more gains for the end merchant to achieve. So let's go into oh, okay. So they are building store like Amazon style. They have very similar style of the menu. This one reminds me Amazon, like by categories, by brands. Let's see. So let's go into this one and let's profile a category page. How do you think, what kind of result we're gonna see here?
This one's been pretty heavy in our experience, but I don't know if they're all heavy or if it's just specific ones that are heavy. Because I've hit some that are definitely took longer than others. Anything interesting we could upgrade to on this page?
Yeah, I think you know what gonna be our next suggestion. Smile Elasticseat, right?
Yeah.
And definitely Elasticseat is gonna shave off a lot of milliseconds from this page, because it's not gonna populate temporary table storage. And then they can just remove mirror switch search extension, and they just can install this absolutely free. No need to pay, for the license or whatever. Just open source extension. Just go and install. Try it out on the dev instance first, of course, to make sure that your design is not completely broken. Just adjust your design, and it's going to be a very nice looking category page with layered navigation. So let's see what we have here. So there is almost 500 database queries. We have 200 milliseconds spent on I/O, and half of it is actually happening on the database. The other half probably happens on Redis or file system. So let's take a look at the timeline right away. I think we'll right away see here a menu, of course. So we just right away skipping it because we already know what is the problem there. Okay, so the product list, I think it's the same problem as on homepage, because there is just more products, but I think there is the same deal product. Yeah, is deal product happening here as well. Also, there is Magento bug as well. It's kind of a bug, but not a bug. Magento introduced it actually as a feature in 2.0. In Magento 1, the tier price was calculated as a part of the price index. In Magento 2, unfortunately, the tier price is not calculated as a part of the price index. Like, you don't have anymore this tier price field on which you can rely and show as low as value on the front end. However, I don't think that this customer is actually utilizing tier prices, because I don't see any as low as labels on these products. Probably customer needs just to check. Oh, wait a second, there is. Sorry. Right away, as I said, they don't use it. I right away see a product with as low as label. So this Audio Quest, and it has probably some price tiers if you buy it in bulk. Or no, it's actually just a configurable product.
I wonder why it says as low as.
It's Magento way of showing a price for configurable product on a category page, because it can change per option. So they decide, hey, let's just show it as low as. You can change it in configuration, so you can just show it as a price. But also, like, you're right, why it's showing as low as when you actually have a single price for any type of connector.
Yeah. But as low as disappears once you change it. That's interesting.
Yeah, because it's gets updated by JavaScript, and and as soon as you choose an option, it's not as low as anymore because you already pre-selected something. So this is, I think, a valid behavior.
As low as it goes. Yeah. 29 as low as it goes.
Oh boy, it's so expensive. All those USB Type-C active cables. This is crazy. My MacBook USB Type-C cables got broken so often. It's just terrible quality and
dongle life. Yeah. Hashtag dongle life.
That's why I really like my PC build here.
Me too, man. My laptop, I've got HDMI and an HDMI port, network and a network port.
Sorry, I'm wrong to call it PC build. It's just a desktop build because I run Linux for my work every day. So
I got full ports on my laptop and I love it. I plug into them. I tried to use a Thunderbolt 3 dock for it, and it's janky and sketchy. So I just go straight to the ports. Both size ports are nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so looks like this page there is some improvements can be done on products rendering, right? So
yeah, so tier pricing, anything they can do with that, or that's just the way it is?
Look, 1 hour mark.
That's our 1 hour reminder. The audience can't see it, but Ivan needs to reboot to finish installing Windows updates because he dual boots into Windows only when we record.
Yeah,
and then I don't think you ever actually do the updates before you boot back into Linux, do you? You just keep closing the box out and then just reboot into Linux.
Yeah, so I was doing some updates before previous recording, so we didn't see it last time because on that day I booted prior into Windows and decided, let's run it update, and it took 40 minutes of my time to wait for it to complete. So I'm definitely just gonna reboot into Ubuntu and forget about it.
Yeah, just forget about it
till next recording. Yeah, so definitely the product list, there's some time can be saved here, and the right navigation as well. So here we see that the filter values are a little bit slow, and here we have a must shop by. So there is mirror with search, there is a must shop by, and here is our performance issue right here, like 700 something millisecond to render filters. And there is also this mirror suite extension is again alters the query from Magento, and there is some query happening and it builds alert navigation. So yeah, just switch to Elasticsearch, and the same thing happens. Search by brand, search box, this is Mage Store. So many shop by extensions here. So Mage Store's shop by brand also introduces some performance issues. So basically, like, all this piece of code can be reduced to very simple database queries and operations, like, again, below 1 second is possible. So there is nothing special on this category page in order to keep its render time slow.
So would you replace all those with Elastic Suite or just the shop buys?
So in general, like the alert navigation, the search, and any kind of additional extensions that are used to generate those filters, like, I would just invest some time of a developer to build the customizations on top of Elasticsearch instead of installing an extension that will grab this data outside of Elasticsearch, because I'm more than sure that shop by brand from Mage Store is not using the same method as, let's say, shop by is retrieving the data, and this extension probably executes it through a search API of Magento catalog search module that invokes a lot of redundant operations. So that's a little bit of a problem, I think. Yeah, right there. So in general, yeah, we can save this 5 seconds easily.
No, that's not just 5 seconds. That is just so much load on the server. Like,
yeah, it's definitely so. I'm just talking from point of view of the end user who is visiting the website, right? If you click a filter, you want to have a snappy website. You don't want to wait for 5 seconds to get the response back on your selections.
Once any traffic comes in, like everything slows down. I mean, Stratos will scale, but when you're hitting the database for all those requests, like customers.
Yeah, the biggest problem here is definitely the standard Magento search engine. So it's using MySQL, and this standard search engine is utilizing a lot of temporary tables.
Yeah, so we've been increasing the memory for temp tables in MySQL for customers a lot, and across the board even, but still, once you get so many concurrent users, you're going to disk for it. You can't allocate that much.
Okay, so let's go into product page, right?
Yep.
So this is some kind of simple product with, or it's a configurable product as well, probably configurable. Let's see. Let's disable aggregation and profile this product page. That's fast, so probably it's not a configurable product. Oh, that's a lot for a power cable.
That's proprietary for sure. $1,000.
Yeah, and someone talking that Apple charges too much for a monitor stand.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at the timeline. So 6 seconds. This is not too fast. So definitely menu. So we already discussed it. And then related products. So there's probably the same thing with the deal product and product price itself. So probably this one takes some time because of that. Also what we have here as well. We have a lot of small elements. Oh, it's getting a little bit late here. I'm just a little bit.
It is later than we normally record.
Yeah, so here we have some rendering, but I think here we see some slow render times because, first of all, the composer is not optimized, and maybe the opcode cache as well is not turned on, so it could be a problem as well. And considering that composer afterloads are not optimized, I highly doubt that they disabled file validation in opcode cache. So again, before
file validation, if auto scaling's on, we usually disable that. But if auto scaling's off, we usually leave it enabled so that when customers' FTP changes up, there's a lot of customers who will do that. They'll just put code up on the instance and expect to see their changes right away. So,
but do we right now test an auto-scaled instance or single scale? Because we are using new Blackfire profiler, right?
Yeah, I think auto scaling's off for this customer, I think.
Okay. Oh, so here we have our Amasti shop by, and here we have Composer after load. You see, Composer version loading. So this one is a problem. And again, like, just remove Amasti shop by. I don't see why Amasti shop by is used on a product page. Like, it doesn't make sense. Do you see anything related to shop by here?
Not go up? No.
I don't see anything as well. Like, this one is just related products, and this one is just a slider of products you might be interested in. So probably it's a cross sale. But in general, yeah, I don't think it's something valuable. And here again, we see the Larit navigation is built here as well on the product page. That makes it completely redundant, right? You don't want to have an Larit navigation on the product page. So, and this actually comes from this. Oh, so I see. This one, this small block here, you might be interested in these products. This one is a block that is a CMS block. And it gets probably rendered by a system, so they have some kind of CMS block that contains this special template that they use, and inside of this template, all of extensions like mirror suite search and Amasti shop by, they just add a lot of hooks that execute completely redundant stuff. Sorry, I'm gonna sneeze. Okay, so here we have it. There's a lot of time that can be saved, definitely. So basically, yeah, again, menu, and again, shop by, mirror suite search, like very simple solution that can save a lot of hosting resources. And then I would advise this customer to investigate more in detail when they remove these big bottlenecks, like top menu and Larit navigation usage on a product page, on a home page, on redundant places. Then try to go and debug themselves and see what else is taking time, because then they will see more information, because right now, like, these pieces are not much contributing. It doesn't make sense, just taking a look at them right now and work on it, because you have bigger problems that can give much more return right away.
Yeah. Our team says they disabled auto scaling when they were working on search. I don't know exactly why they would do that, but probably making changes often or something, and they wanted to see them right away. That's usually what happens, and then people forget to turn it back on. Do you remember when PCs, those old PCs, used to have that turbo button on the front? It would actually say turbo, and it'd be a separate button. And I think in the UI.
And, like, it's completely different. As far as I know, this turbo buttons that actually was doing completely different opposite.
Yeah, it could. It absolutely could.
It was actually reducing the clock speed of the processor, because the old games was not
for
running.
backwards compatibility. Yeah.
So,
but it makes me think though. I kind of want to put a turbo button like that in the UI, and when you click it, it does Composer auto load optimizations. Because I think every store we looked at hasn't done that. So we should just create a turbo button, and it does the Composer auto load optimize.
Yeah, but the thing is that before 2.2, Magento composer.json was also not containing the right file path for generated class maps. So after I was doing some performance testing back in 2016, I was doing some benchmarks of Magento 1 versus Magento 2. And I've noticed that a lot of, so there was this famous benchmark from other company, I won't name it, that they were telling like Magento 2 is like 4 times slower than Magento 1 and so on. And I just found out like they completely misconfigured Magento, like they didn't enable composer afterload. Also, I found out a couple of bugs in Magento itself that also are very simple to fix on deployment phase just by modifying composer.json and including all the files that you want to have been included into afterload class map of composer. So if you have a store that migrated from one version of Magento to another one, you are responsible for changing your composer.json file in your project. So if you're running a store from 2.0 era, and you are, let's say, right now on 2.3, your composer.json file might be out of date from the base package. So you need to adjust it, especially the locations in your composer.json that are related to afterload sections, because afterload has been changed.
And it wasn't fixed until after 2.2?
After 2.2 only. So after my feedback from that load test, I've submitted some patches and they fixed it in GitHub repository, and they fixed it also in their deployment scripts when they deploy those Magento-based packages. But when you upgrade, unfortunately, the base root composer.json file is not updatable because it violates, update of this file violates composer consistency. Because you don't know what you can update in project composer.json files that might already have been modified for this project.
Well, that's interesting. Okay.
And there is already some scripts that actually can modify existing one. So definitely it's nice when I can just point to GitHub repository where it's already existing. I think it's in my repository, yes. Magento load test Magento 2 bootstrap. So here's this funny sh file you see here. Mm-hmm. So this is from the Magento 2.0 era. There is a bunch of optimizations that I apply to it, and there is a simple shell script that will include the required passes into afterload, but this is for 2.0. For 2.2 and 2.3, this pass is different. It's not var generation, it's now generation/code. So it changed a little bit between releases. But you can adjust this code and just modify this one into the right pass, and it will automatically patch your composer.json file to include the proper afterload configuration for your project. So I will put it into our secret Mage Mojo load and loop Slack chat.
Yeah, we'll link that up in the show notes.
And I'm definitely going to create some branch. Actually, let's do it right away. Can I edit file in place here? Yes, I can. Let's do it. So this just should be generation, or generated. Let's take a look at Magento GitHub Magento 2, and let's take a look at the code, and let's see at the composer.json. Generated code. So this is how it should look like. And in 2.0 there was no path like that. So here we are.
Awesome. So then you can use that if you were on Magento pre 2.2 and you upgraded to 2.2, your composer JSON needs this in order for the auto load optimizations to work, right?
Yeah. And let me save it right away. And I will call it after 2.2 upgrade. But it's only if you have a pre-release of, if you were using 2.1 before 2.2 was released. So it's only applicable in this case. If you started from 2.2, you don't need this one. And yeah, I'm just gonna leave it as a branch for now. And I'm gonna put it into our show notes. Yeah.
Cool.
Very fast online editing without checking the syntax. Nothing can go wrong, right?
Nah, never.
Never, yeah.
No, never.
Never, ever. Okay, so I think we can wrap up our show today.
All right. Well, thank you to Blackfire.io for sponsoring us and providing this great tool that we use on the show. We do have support for that in Mojo Stratus now in the UI. Under PHP settings, you can enable that yourself. And you can find us at Load in the Loop on Twitter, LITL at magemojo.com, and Ivan will link up our own Twitters in the show notes. Anything else you want to say before we head out?
Yeah, so just profile your code with Blackfire. Blackfire is a very nice tool, and keep track of your database queries, keep track of your concurrency and log contention on your production servers. Pay attention to the way how you use database. So thank you everyone who joined our show today, and till the next recording, I think it's going to be in 2 weeks.
Yes. And use Smile Elastic Suite.
Yeah, Smile Elastic Suite. Big shout out to guys for developing it and making it free for everyone. That's great.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.